a God of covenant. God is a covenant keeping God. God has made a covenant with Noah. God made a covenant with Abraham. We talk so much about the word covenant in our Christian life. Okay? Actually, the Old Testament and New Testament, the two parts of your Bible, originally it was called the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. The book of Hebrews talks a lot about covenant. It says because the Old Covenant was not sufficient, we needed a new covenant. Okay, there are many verses, many things that we can talk about covenant. It says in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 18, I will establish my covenant. He's talking about a covenant. He talks in Psalm 132 and verse 12, he said, sons, if you will keep my covenant. So what is this word covenant? Covenant. In Hebrews chapter 8 it says, the covenant, if the Old Testament covenant was faultless, we would have no need for a New Testament, a new covenant. Okay? Because the Old Testament was had faults in it. We were not able to keep the law. So we were not able to go through that old covenant. So we wanted a new covenant. Okay, so and in chapter 13 of verse 20 of Hebrews, he's talking about an everlasting covenant. So what is this covenant? Today we'll study about this covenant. Actually, the word covenant, okay, some people think it's an agreement. It is not an agreement. It is like an agreement, but it is not an agreement. See, an agreement, if we see, mostly like we'll have land agreement, house agreement. There are so many agreements that we have, business agreements. In agreement, we will say, okay, if you do this, if you fulfill this, then I will do this. I will fulfill this. If you keep your word, I will keep my word. If it is a house agreement, we will make an agreement. The house owner will promise and say, I will provide the correct water for you, necessary water, electricity, and see that no problem comes to the house here. So this kind of agreement the house owner makes. So then the tenant will make an agreement and say, if I receive the non-stop flow of water, good electricity, non-stop flow of electricity, if I have all these things done, then I will pay my rent. Okay? But suppose there is some problem there. There is some problem with the electricity, there is some problem with the water, there is some problem with the house. Maybe somebody else is coming and giving problem and saying, this is my house, this is not his house. So then the agreement will change, the terms will change. Okay? So, but covenant is not like that. It is not if you do this, I will do this. Covenant is if you don't do it also, I will do my part. That is a covenant. So it is much more than an agreement. Why are we talking about covenant today? Because when a bride and a groom come together, they stand before the altar, when they hold hands, it is called a covenant that they make. That's why Christian marriage is called a covenantal marriage. In Africa, among the tribal people, among the tribal groups, this covenant very famous. Tribes made covenants. Groups made covenant with so many people. Especially those missionaries that made a covenant with the tribal head. Okay, people like Stanley, people like Livingstone. But they never realized the importance of this covenant. They thought, okay, it's just a tribal practice. It's a practice among these primitive people. They just made it. But they never realized, but because they made that practice, they made that covenant, in future, they will be opening the door for the ministry for people who are going into Africa, going into China, going into India. So important is a covenant. 3 reasons for making a covenant. The first reason was, if a strong tribe was living and a weak tribe was living at the side, the weak tribe would always make a covenant with a stronger tribe because he would want the help of a stronger tribe. And because of that, he'll make a covenant, knowing that the strongest tribe will protect me, will take care of me. So he'll always make an agreement with the stronger tribe. And this was the first reason. Okay? Even when Abraham went, he was going as a vagabond. Okay? He made a covenant with local people around him, the local kings, with the local tribal kings. He made a covenant. So that was the first reason for protection. They make a covenant. The second reason was, suppose your two businessmen were there. Both the businessmen will enter into covenants. Because when they enter into covenant, they won't cheat each other. See, that in agreement, one person can cheat another. He'll say, because you cheated me, I'm not going to work. One will be a working partner, one will be a finance partner. So if the finance partner cheats on the working partner will say, I will not work. So this is what the agreement. But a covenant, it's not like that. Even if you don't do your part, I will do my part. So two businessmen will enter into a covenant. Two people, if they loved each other, they would enter into a covenant, saying, I love you so much, I want to live with you, I want to protect you, I want to provide for you. So this is why they made covenants. Okay, maybe two friends also will make a covenant, like Jonathan and David made a covenant. They will say, I will protect you, I will give my life for you, I will protect you. And that's what Jonathan did. Okay, every time he found his father was planning to kill David, he used to come and tell Jonathan. He used to come and tell David, David, be careful, my father is planning this thing tonight. Okay, it was a covenant that they made, David and Jonathan. We'll see some methods. And when we study the methods, let's see the similarity in a Christian marriage, okay, and the tribal covenants. In a covenant, two people always come together. In a Christian marriage, you find the bride and groom come together. This is the first thing of a covenant. Two people come together, and then the priest is there who will ordain the covenant, who will pronounce the vows for the covenant, who will pronounce curses. When Moses brought the law, when he had the 10 commandments, it seems he stood on one mountain and the people on the other mountain. And he proclaimed, if you keep this covenant, if you keep this law, if you do what this law tells you to do, and then the people God will bless you. And the people are also responding. If you do this, I will do this. See, every blessing of the Lord, if you notice, blessings don't come freely. Salvation is free, but not blessing. Every blessing has a condition to it. So when Moses was telling the blessings, pronouncing the blessing, if you do this, I will do this. And they are pronouncing it, and the people are responding, repeating what Moses says. So when the people repeat what Moses says, you can hear the echo clearly. Clearly you can hear the echo there. Okay? And the echo was talking back to them and saying, okay, the Lord will bless me when I do this. The Lord will keep me when I do this. And then the curses. Deuteronomy chapter 28, you know, from chapter 1 to verse 14 is the blessings, and then the curses. And even the curses Moses read out, and the people had to repeat it. So this is what the priest does. When the two people come together and hold hands and make a covenant, the priest will pronounce the blessings and the cursings pertaining to the covenant. The next thing is, they come with their friends and relations. You remember your marriage? Your friends came, your relations came. Okay, so many people came and witnessed your marriage. That is what happens in a covenant. They stand as witnesses there to witness. When two parties in the tribal group hold hands together to make a covenant, all the tribe from this side is there, the tribal people from that side is there, and all are standing there and witnessing the covenant. Next, a cup of wine. A cup of wine was kept there, and then the two people make an insertion. Okay, they hold their hands, and the blood drips into the wine. The blood of both the parties drip into the wine. And when each party, a drop drips in, they take that wine and both of them drink that wine. To show as a sign that even your blood is there in my body. My blood is there in your body. Okay, you know what happens. Okay, after our marriage, when the first time the husband and wife, when we get together, okay, so the blood mingles. Okay, and only kiss is there. Then they have a kiss, okay. So the two people who made a covenant, okay, they just hug each other, they just kiss each other as a sign of their covenant. Here, in the Christian marriage, we just hold hands, but in the covenant, they actually cut their wrist. Okay, so that whenever they meet an enemy, whenever somebody comes in that forest area, any other tribal people come to attack you, they show the hand and they see the sign maybe an alphabet, maybe some symbol, and they know, recognize it and say, oh, that belongs to that tribal head, so I should not touch him. If I touch him, I'm touching the head, and if I touch the head, that whole tribe will come against me, so they will not touch you. This is what happens when we get married. We receive the mark, we receive the mark of our husband or our wife, okay? And then they receive a name. A sign is that we have a ring or we have a thali or whatever we wear. It shows that we are married. Then the name is given, okay? The name, the people in the covenant. And usually we get a new name, a family name. So this is what we see, what that happens in a covenant. So far I told you. Now the last thing is the curses for the covenant. The priest who stands there, and when these people two are holding their wrists together, he pronounces blessing. He says, you both are blood brothers. You both are blood sisters. You both have become covenant partners. Everything of yours belongs to him. Everything of his belongs to you. He will protect you with his life. She will protect you with your life. This is how he pronounced blessing. Then he says, if any of you, other than death, before death, death can break the covenant. Other than death, before death, if any of you break the covenant, these curses will come upon you. That is what we see in Deuteronomy chapter 28. He pronounces blessings and he pronounces cursings. Okay, so the same thing we are going to see here today. We call it in our Christian marriage, lawfully we call it, or worldly we call it divorce. That is breaking a covenant, tearing off from the covenant. Okay, the only punishment for that, okay, was death. In the tribal areas, when people made covenants, and one person tried to break the covenant, and they found out that he's breaking the covenant, he's betraying his friend. Because his friend trusted him with everything, okay, everything he trusted him, his secrets, his everything. And now he's betraying his friend to the enemy. Then they know he broke the covenant, and what they would do is, they would go searching after him. They'll take a spear and go and spear him if they find him. Anybody will find him. Anybody in that tribe found him. He is broken. Our leader's covenant that our leader made with him, they would go and spear him to death. Today, if people are divorced, are going to be speared, or are going to be killed, what would be the rate of population left? It is so serious. The word divorce in the original language, if you see, apostate. The word apostate, if you see, it is there, the military people, the military services, the secret services, armed services, they use it in military, that word. It means to forsake one's country, to betray one's country. When you become a soldier, Navy or Army or whatever wing you belong to, when you join the forces, okay, the armed forces, to protect your country, you make a vow and say, I will protect my country. I will keep the secrets of my country. I will protect my country till my death. But then, if you are caught betraying your country, selling the secrets, telling the secrets where the weapons are kept, where this thing is done, where they are going to launch the next attack, when they find you selling those secrets to the enemy, it's an apostate. You apostate. What they do is, they can kill you. Not only the country or some officer, even the person who worked next to you, the soldier was your friend, he can kill you. You will be forgiven because he killed you so that he will protect his country. The same word is used for divorce. When we marry, we make a covenant with our partner and we say, death do us part. I don't know if you remember all the covenant, all the promises that you made holding your hand when the priest was telling you, when the pastor or the priest was telling you those promises, and you were holding her hand and she was holding your hand, and you were all dressed up and you were all nervous. Maybe a long struggle had brought you now to the point of marriage. Okay, maybe you have many oppositions. I don't know if it was an arranged marriage, a love marriage. You might have had faced so much oppositions. Okay, now you have achieved it. You have climbed up the valley. You came through the valley. You climbed up the mountain. You are on the peak now. You have succeeded. You are so happy. And to mount it up now, you are dressed up. The girl has a reed, a veil, and all those pins poking her everywhere. She's restless, it's so hot. You're waiting when the pastor finishes. And that time the people are around smiling, and then the cameras are there. You don't know how to react. You have some reactions happening inside of you. Butterflies are flying everywhere. You're nervous. And then the priest is telling you, put all your hands. Repeat what I say. So your ears are hearing what he's saying, and your mouth is repeating. I don't know how many of us, okay, include myself, how many of us really meant it, understood it. But one thing we remember, death do us part, we would have said. How many of us waited for death to part us? How many of us parted ourselves? For what reason we parted? Think about the reasons. If Jesus was to just throw us like that, divorce us, because he compares himself, he says, I am the husband, I am the head, you are the bride, the church is the bride. I am coming back for you one day, I am preparing a place. Suppose we as church, as believers, so many times we sinned. From the day I accepted Jesus to today, you mean to say I haven't sinned at all? So many times I've sinned. Sometimes every day we do something that Jesus doesn't like. We think sinning sometimes is just smoking, drinking, adultery. Getting angry is sin. When you call your brother a dog, a fool, it's a sin. Anything that God does not like is a sin. Simple. Don't ask me what is sin, anything that Jesus does not like is sin. Whatever he does not like, okay, that is sin. And you think we never sin? We sinned. Suppose Jesus had to take and throw us out and say, okay, I divorce you, I don't want you. No. Every time we sin, we go to him, we ask forgiveness, he washes us, he cleanses. In fact, the Holy Spirit grieves inside of us when we sin. And he's indicating, go, ask for forgiveness, go and ask forgiveness. Ask forgiveness. He keeps persuading us. See how easily we think of the word. The small matter that happened, the small thing that happened, say, let's divorce him. And then there are elders to instigate. There are parents, there are mothers, fathers. Mothers telling their daughters, just leave him alone. There are fathers telling their sons, throw her out. Not realizing the seriousness. If you break a covenant, brothers and sisters, my friends, you that are called Christians, we that are called Christians, we that are called children of God, if we break our covenant, you know, death is the reward that we will get. Death is the punishment that we will get. I don't care if you are a pastor, I don't care if you are a minister of God, I don't care if you are just an ordinary believer, I don't care if you are a bishop or archbishop or whatever you are. If you break your covenant of marriage, God is serious because you break the image of God. See, when Paul talks about in Ephesians chapter 5, when Paul is talking here, he's talking anytime in marriage or any marriage function, you would have heard this verse. He talks about marriage from verse 22, chapter 5 and verse 22. And 32, the verse says, this is a great mystery. What is a great mystery? He's telling your wives, submit to your husbands, as to the Lord, husbands, be the other end of the wife. He's talking about husband, wife, husband, wife, husband, wife. Suddenly when he comes to verse 32, he says, this is a great mystery. What is the mystery? And then Paul says here, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. See, Paul was not concerned about talking about husband and wife to the Ephesian church. He was talking about the relationship of church, of Christ and the church. And the best way to explain Christ and the church in the worldly relationship was husband and wife relationship. He could not explain child and parents or relationship because the child has to leave a parent. The umbilical cord must be cut. If the baby is born and you keep this, I want the baby to be clinging onto my cord, the baby will die. The moment it comes out, it's the first step, cut the cord. Same way, the girl, by the time she's 18, 19, we start getting worried as parents. Why? We don't want to chase her from the house, but we want her to go to a secure place. We want our future to be secure. We know that relationship has to stop. Brother sisters relationship, there's a limit to that, okay? You can just say hi and bye at that period of time. You would have been so close together, slept together, got up together, ate together, went to school together. But after a period of time, it's just hi and bye because some other relationship has come. So what is that binding relationship, husband and wife? And that relationship Christ chose to portray himself to the world. He says, as a husband loves his wife, cares for his wife, protects his wife. When she is weak, he helps her. When she is sick, he becomes a doctor, a nurse.